the Center for Religious Liberty at Family Research Council, we promote religious freedom for everyone, because the only alternative is religious freedom for no one. We encourage Americans and the American government to engage and advocate for the persecuted, and they do. We work every day to bring good news to the afflicted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners. We do it because that's what Jesus does. We work to give freedom to others because we ourselves have been set free.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. I'm Joseph, back home sitting in for Tony. Tony will be back in the chair with you on Monday. In response to a lawsuit filed by Family Research Council, a federal judge has granted class action status to 13 Marines in their fight against the military COVID-19 vaccine mandate. The ruling provides another setback for the Biden administration and is consistent with court rulings that have found military branches are violating federal law with these mandates. What will this mean going forward, both for the 13 Marines and the military vaccine mandate in general? Joining me now to discuss this is Ken Klukowski, a former senior counsel in the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice and a former special counsel in the White House's Office of Management and Budget. He has also litigated constitutional cases at the U.S. Supreme Court. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
Good to see you today. Tell us about the ruling today from the court, what this means for this case.
Well, it's where the class certification happened a little while ago, so this is now to the next step. And what's going on is 3,700 U.S. Marines have a religious objection to taking one of the COVID-19 vaccines. And they all requested religious exemptions from the Pentagon. The Pentagon denied all of those. In fact, we started out with closer to 7,000 Marines, but thousands were already discharged before we could get court relief. There was another law firm based out of Florida that does great religious liberty work. And as they were litigating this, and they sought a class-wide certification to cover all 3,700 remaining Marines, while they were doing that, there was one Marine captain who was essentially put on notice that he was going to be immediately kicked out the military, that he was going to be discharged. And so the judge quickly entered an order in his case, and then DOJ appealed that up to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit, even while the other 3,700 Marines were still in that Florida court in Tampa. And so as a result, 13 U.S. Marines that my law firm represented in the Southern District of Texas, and so they are encompassed in this broad class action for the Marines. Nonetheless, because this one Marine captain got ruled on first, and his appeal is first before the Federal Appeals Court, it also freed up our original clients to be able to file their own brief participating in his case so that we can ask the Federal Appeals Court to hand down a broad, robust decision protecting religious liberty just in the case of this one captain, so that when the entire class action appeal is decided a few months from now, this first decision will automatically then be extended to cover all 4,000 Marines.
Now,
I know that's kind of in the weeds procedurally. I know that's kind of a complex setup, but that's how we found ourselves here.
No, I think we got it. There's a pioneer in this case, and if he wins, then we think everyone can win. If I've summarized that quickly.
Yeah, that is a great way to sum it up. That's exactly right. This one Marine charged ahead first, and so by coming to reinforce him early on, it can cover the main force when everyone else's day comes before the court.
Now, one of the critical arguments in the briefing in this case is that the government has failed to prove long-term efficacy of the vaccine. Why is that important?
Well, I'll tell you, this is stunning because the legal framework, whenever an action by the government burdens a fundamental right, or at least certain rights, like the free exercise of religion, and also a federal statute here, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, or RFRA, as we call it for short. The legal standard for both is called strict scrutiny. And when strict scrutiny is involved, it means a court starts out with the assumption that what the government did is illegal. That's the default. If no one does anything, the government loses because the court has to presume, when strict scrutiny is involved, that what the government has done is unconstitutional. The burden rests entirely on the government to save it, and they have to do that by two things. They must argue how their action is narrowly tailored to achieve a public interest that is truly compelling in magnitude. And then second, they need to back up both halves of that, both the narrow tailoring and the compelling interest. They have to back it up with evidence. The court just doesn't go with their say-so. They have to, like in a case like this, provide medical scientific data. And in this case, what the Pentagon was saying is that requiring every service member to get a COVID-19 vaccine is absolutely necessary to achieve the government's compelling interest of stopping the spread of COVID-19. And so our argument was coming in saying, you have no evidence that the vaccine taken one time, just a one-time vaccine, which some Marines could have gotten, a year and a half ago, to say you have to show that that actually does stop the spread of COVID-19, or the Pentagon's vaccine mandate is not narrowly tailored, meaning it would be struck down in court.
Well, the CDC has recently acknowledged that the COVID vaccine does not stop the spread of the COVID virus, which makes me think if that's going to be relevant in these decisions, and we think it's obvious, but of course the wheels of justice turn slowly. But Ken, last question I think I have for you on that, because the CDC has said the COVID vaccine does not stop the spread of the coronavirus, because the president himself has said that the coronavirus epidemic is over. Why do they continue to enforce these mandates in about 30 seconds?
Well, I'll tell you that, at FRC, Tony Perkins, General Jerry Boykin, and Ken Blackwell have been leading the fight all the way for religious liberty in the military on this issue. And so when we partnered up, and we're honored to represent FRC alongside the Marines in this brief, when we partnered up on this, that's why we made the point of citing what the CDC said, that they've changed the goalpost now. They've admitted, okay, the vaccines are not stopping the spread of the disease.
I've got to cut you off.
Sure.
We'll do this again. We are out of time. Thanks for being with us, and we'll be back with you right after the break. Stay with us.
It begins here, and here, and here, every day. Before you stand, you need solid ground. Standing in a culture that wants you to surrender the truth won't work unless you have a firm foundation. At Family Research Council, we have